In this session, we will learn about date-time functions. So date-time functions help us with the date formats and it helps us to manipulate date-time related columns. So many times in our data, we have to work with date-time columns. In those cases, these date-time functions are super useful. Now let's consider our employee details table. Here are some of the rows and columns. So let's say your analytics team, they want to retrieve the employee's detail along with the current date and time. Why do we need to get the current date and time? Now in practical scenarios, let's see, we want to find how many years an employee has been with our company. So in that case, we want to fetch the current date and time and compare it with the higher date. We can subtract both the days and get total number of days or for how many years a particular employee has been with our organization. Depending on our requirement, we can return the current date and time in a single timestamp as shown. Now this is done using now function, which is a date time function. Similarly, we can return current date and current time in two separate columns as shown in this slide. This can be done using current underscore date function to get current date and current underscore time function to get the current time. Now let's solve this on Metabase. First, let's see the contents of the table. So let's look at our data set. So we will do select star, then from our table name, which is employee underscore detail. Now let's look at the data set. I'll run this command and we can see that. So we have employee ID, we have first name, last name, their email address, we have the hire date, and we have their department, gender, salary, and their region ID. Alright, now let's get the current date and time in a new column. So let's say I want to get current date time. So we will do select star, we will tick all the columns and now we will create a new column using now function. Now we can rename this as current underscore date underscore time and we can read our data from our employees detail table. Now I'll run this command and you can see here, you can see that there is a current date and time. Now the current date and time within my time zone is different, but here you see a different date and time because this query by default is showing us UTC time. So it is showing us the time in the UTC time zone. So it may differ from your exact time zone. Now let's get the date and time in different columns. So again, we will use different functions. So I'll select all the rows. And now the function is current underscore date. This will give us current date. And the next function is current underscore time. This will give us current time. And again, we can read our data set, which is employee underscore detail. Alright. So now because these are functions already, it is not a good practice to use these functions as the column names. So let's say I call it as current date extracted, and let's say for this column also I name it as current time underscore extracted. Right, and let's see if we try to run this. So now this works for us, right? So always it is a good practice to not use the function name as a column because those names are already reserved for the pre-built function in C. All right. Now, there is an interesting thing that you learn. The time extracted does not match with the date time column that we extracted earlier. For example, if I use now, and let's say we call it as a current date time, and I'll run this, you can see that the time here is 4:50 p.m. The time here is 11:20 a.m. So the reason why this is happening is when we use current underscore time, it extracts the current time of our database server. So it is showing us the current time of Metabase, right? But when we use the function now, it is showing us the UTC time zone. So there is a difference in terms of the time that they show. And another interesting observation, you'll see that the current date extracted has 12 a.m. across all the rows. So this is by default shown by Metabase. It means that it is date. The time is just by default coming to 12. So we can ignore that. All right, now let's quickly summarize what we learned within this session. We looked at now function that helps us in getting both the current date and time. Then we looked at current underscore date function that can help us to get current date, but it does not give the time. At last, we looked at current underscore time, which only gives us current time, but it does not show the date. And like we use the syntax, we can use select and then whatever date time function we are using. For example, it could be now, it could be current underscore date or current underscore time. And we can rename it using as like this, and yeah, we can use from to redart it. Now in the next section, we will continue learning about more date time functions